Hello, class. Welcome to our first chapter, Chapter 1, which is an introduction to developmental psychology. So I have a couple of lectures for this chapter that I'd like to go over that sort of briefly condenses what we'll be covering. All right. So when we think about what developmental psychology is, we very often are faced with images like this of small children. But development is so much more than that. When we kind of look to our book as to what development development has actually been categorized as the pattern of movement or change that begins at conception and then continues throughout the human lifespan. And this is really, really important. So my question for you is, if we're looking at this definition, then, why? Why are we looking at development throughout the lifespan as opposed to just during a small portion, like those images that I just showed you on the first page? Well, you're not here to respond to me, so we'll kind of talk through this, and then hopefully we can meet up and have a larger discussion on it. There is a significant importance for us to study lifespan development across the entire lifespan. And so development itself involves growth, but it also includes dying. So when we think about development, you're going to see for almost every single chapter we discuss that there'll be a sort of increase. We'll have a bit of kind of a peak, and then we'll start to decrease. This occurs in almost everything in our development. We think about physical development. We can think about our lung capacity, right? Or our heart capacity, our muscle tone, our muscle strength, our hearing. All of these things sort of have this general U-shaped pattern to development. The other really wonderful or interesting thing about this class as compared to some of the others that you may have taken is it's extremely relevant to us, right? In the sense that almost every person, for the most part, is going to find themselves in the position of being an infant, a child, an adolescent, an adult, hopefully an older adult, and so on and so forth. And so because of this, it becomes extremely important for us to have a really good understanding of the developmental trajectory, or what we can expect from the time that we're born until the time that we die. And so we'll be discussing many of those things throughout this semester. When we think about development, though, there are a couple of things that I want you all to keep in mind. So the first is related to human lifespan. So our human lifespan is the number of years on average that a human being can live. Every mammal has a lifespan. And so we can think about how long any given person could live. Your book talks about this. The maximum human lifespan for us is 122 years. We don't typically see people living to be 122 years, right? But what we have seen is a change in life expectancy. And this is the average number of years a person is expected to live based on when they were born. This has changed. So lifespan, or maximum human lifespan, has not actually changed, not since the time human beings have existed. But what has changed is our life expectancy, how long that we may be alive. And this is due to lots of things, predominantly access to health care, right? Vaccinations, nutritious foods. All of these things then influence our life expectancy. The other thing to really keep in mind is that we do have developmental changes. And while a lot of things we talk about, a lot of our development is happening sort of early on in our life, we can't forget the amount of development that actually occurs into adulthood as well. So it's not just infancy, it's not just childhood. We have a lot of changes that occur for us even into adulthood. So you may ask, kind of what causes us to develop? And one of the biggest things has to do with maturation. And this is developmental changes that are happening in our body or in our behavior. And this occurs as a result of the aging process. So specifically related to biological development. So think about it something like this. Your brain matures. This then influences psychological changes, which might influence concentration, our ability to problem solve, our ability to understand other people, their thoughts, their feelings. And all of this is a catalyst for change, and more specifically for development. We also can think about learning as well. And learning, as defined by your text, is a relatively permanent change in behavior that results from our experiences or practice of engaging in our environment. And so experiences then are going to produce changes in our behaviors, in our thoughts, in our feelings. And when we think about this learning and these experiences, it is a big factor in why individuals develop differently, right? So we're going to talk about general expectations of how people develop. I'll talk to you, for example, about cognitive development. But within that, we're actually going to see what we call wide individual differences. So, while on average, a child may learn how to walk from between 9 months and 14 months, we consider that a range, right? Some children are going to learn how to walk sooner on that range. Some children are going to walk later. But when we talk about normal development, the child who's walking or starting to walk at 9 months and the child who's walking at, say, 12 months are both developmentally normal, right? It's within that normal range. There are what we say then individual differences within that range, okay? So kind of think about that as we're talking about, on average, what we expect to see. The last thing that's related to our development is this idea of maintenance and regulation. So particularly when we think about neural connections, we have a use it or lose it. So if we are going to be engaging, let's say when we talk about language acquisition, I'm learning a new language. I'm an infant, I'm a child, and somebody's talking to me in another language other than perhaps English. As long as I am continuing to have at least some type of continuing role with that. So maybe somebody's still speaking to me, or maybe I'm watching TV shows with this other language. I'll be able to maintain that. Those neural connections will still remain, they'll still be viable, and they'll still be